Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we're once again going to be going over Hurricane Dorian. So this storm is looking way more organized today, and it's going to be a long video. I am going to go ahead and warn everyone about that. So if you did watch all the way through, thank you. If you don't, it is absolutely fine. I know a lot of times it's hard to watch a longer video. If you want to, you can just skip throughout the video. I don't really mind. I just want, if you're definitely in the path of this, anywhere in the southeast, please just kind of watch this and just make sure that you know what's happening, because this is a very dangerous storm, and I don't want someone clicking off this video, especially from southern Georgia or Florida, and them not knowing what's going to happen. So let's go ahead and get into it. If you consider subscribing and leaving a like down below, I would appreciate it, and let's go ahead and get into it. So right now you can see this is satellite imagery, and you can see how it's really organized. So yesterday we saw Yesterday it was over the Virgin Islands, and today it is up here. The center has traveled all the way up here, so it has been moving fairly fast. It's supposed to slow down, or it is expected to slow down on its way to Florida. Now the thing is, we're gonna have to see how slowed down it does get. And I will explain that later on in the video, but you can see right now we have a really strong storm. You can definitely see where that center of the storm is, and you can see how many thunderstorms are on the outskirts of this storm. It looks very strong and very scary, so this is going to be very dangerous. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the National Hurricane Center's forecast of 5 o'clock update, and you can see how right now we have winds of 85 miles per hour. We've almost had that for, I think we've had that for about the past 3 updates. And as you can see, as we do move into tomorrow, about 12 hours from now, you can see, or just really early tomorrow morning, this is expected to be at 105 miles an hour. So it's supposed to enter the most favorable conditions throughout the next few days. So in this little window in the next few days, we are expecting it to get pretty intense. Now you can see it's only going to be traveling this far in one day. So you can see how it's already starting to slow down. And once these points get a little closer together, you can see how those are usually a 12-hour spans. So you can see every 12 hours it's moving that far, which is not really far, but it's not, not really fast, but it's not really slow. So it's kind of in the middle, a little bit on the slower side, is possibly. We're going to have to see. But you can see we are expecting a major hurricane in the next day. So we should be at 115 miles per hour by tomorrow, tomorrow afternoon. And you can see that major hurricane does just get stronger in the next 2 days to 125 miles per hour, then 130 miles per hour over the next 3 days when it gets close to the Bahamas. And then we are, right now, in the next 4 days, we are expecting a landfall. So somewhere around your September 2nd, which is actually conveniently not conveniently, that's not a good thing, but coincidentally, I don't know what the word would be, but pretty much it's going to be on your Labor Day. So ruining Labor Day plans, ruining your day off from school, just ruining everything for people across a lot of Florida, maybe even southern Georgia. We're still watching. And you can see it does make landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. So that 130 mile per hour is a Category 4 hurricane, and you can see wind gusts could be up to 160 mile per hour. Now I'm going to go ahead and tell you it could get a little stronger than what they are saying right now. I do want to warn people of that. And you can see once it gets to somewhere in the middle of Florida, we are expecting a 75 mile per hour storm right now. So you can see right after landfall, it is expected to be slower, but it will take about 12 hours from this to, let's see, actually. It should take about a whole day for it to get to that 75 mile per hour. So this is a whole day, and it's just almost over the same areas. So that is not good. This has it making landfall somewhere near Port St. Lucie, Palm Bay, West Palm Beach, Miami. You should be looking at this. Tampa, you should be looking at this. Orlando, you need to be looking at this. Anywhere in that area, you definitely do need to be watching, because this could get really bad for you. And you can see beyond that, there still is a lot of uncertainty. It could enter the Gulf. That is still a possibility. Or it could also just go up this way. And lately, over the past few model runs, we were going north, which is what we were thinking today. It was looking a little bit more like that. That's why the cone went a little bit northward. But over the past model run with the hurricane models, I haven't checked the other ones, but I know the hurricane models, it brought it out back to the Gulf. So it did something like this. So we could see it re-strengthen, then move up towards the southeast and bring a lot of heavy rainfall. And let's say if you're 100 or 130 miles an hour, 100 and 130 miles away, something like that in that span, maybe even 200, you could be expecting some rain. So really, some winds. So if you're anywhere like along here, or maybe even up here, you could be getting winds and rains. If you cross here, that's where the wind boundary will kind of stop, hopefully, if this is not as big of a storm. But the possibility is, if it was to be down here in the Gulf for a long time, not a long time, but if it was to spend some more time out in the Gulf, it could be a really strong storm, just like some storms can be. Like, if you think about this, some huge storms had just developed in the Gulf. And this one's already developed, and it has the ingredients it already does need in the Gulf. So if it's already a strong tropical storm once it enters the Gulf, you can imagine the stuff it can do. So that is the big concerning part. If it was to go up towards Georgia, that is still very concerning. But we're dodging a bullet a little if it does go up that way. But you can see right now a lot of the models are bringing rain somewhere across here, and a lot of the models are bringing it up through here. So that's what we're going to have to see. That's kind of where we're split right now, and that's why that cone does extend. Now, there still is the possibility that the storm could fully miss the Florida coast and then go up here, and I will show you why once again in a second, and you will see what I'm talking about. But right now, anywhere across the Gulf and up towards Georgia is where we think it could move, but that still could definitely change. Okay, so this is what I was talking about with the hurricane models. So this is today at the 18Z model run. This is made at 6:30, and you can see how a lot of the models are having it move back into the Gulf. Now, if we were to look at earlier today, let's go to your 12Z. I want to show you how quickly this changes. And you can see how just like 6 hours ago, we were seeing this happening. And we were seeing all the models going up that way and going towards Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, bringing rain and some winds, which was really, really concerning. But the most concerning part is a lot of those models have shifted to where they do go into the Gulf. Now, the question is, how long will it be in the Gulf? That is still up in the air if it does happen. But you can see how some of these do bring it near the Big Bend of Florida, and it could redevelop a little bit. It wouldn't have much time, but maybe a few hours where it has that window to develop. Now, if it was to go down here and make landfall somewhere around here, it'd have a little bit more time, because the Gulf is extremely warm, not much wind shear, has a lot of moisture, so it has ingredients for it to grow once it does enter the Gulf, which is our big concern right now. Okay, do they have an 8? No, they don't. Okay, if we were to move on to the 12Z GFS ensembles, you can see how a lot of these are bringing it somewhere through here, and you can see that's what I was saying, where that kind of split is. A lot of them are taking it into the Gulf, a lot of them are keeping it on the land and taking it up that way. So this was a few hours ago, so this is not our latest model run. So a lot of the models have been shifting, so I would not be surprised if this one is shifting. But right now, this is all we're seeing. You can see it does go into the Big Bend area, like a lot of the hurricane models are taking it, but a lot of them are also going this way and taking it up Georgia into South Carolina, coastal North Carolina. So that's where we're still kind of wondering what's going to happen. If we were to go to the CMC ensembles, these aren't the best to go with a lot of times, but if we were to look at them, you can see how this does make landfall in Florida, and it takes it all the way out to, some of them take it as far as the Louisiana coast, but a lot of them still do take it over the Gulf and make landfall again. And you pretty much, if we're going to make landfall in Florida and go up the southeast coast, it'll be going through Georgia, South Carolina, and coastal North Carolina. And you can see with this, even though it makes landfall on the Florida coast, panhandle also, you can see how it still does go that way. So there's definitely a possibility that either way it goes, it'll end up in the same spot, but it would just have more impacts if it went through the Gulf than anything. Now, the possibility is still there. There are 3 tracks, one that could be going this way, one that could be going this way, and one that could be going this way. So if you're anywhere in here after the landfall, or maybe after our second landfall, you need to be watching out. Now, if it's after our first landfall, you'd be on the eastern side of that. If it's in the middle part, that's where we're going to be seeing our second landfall, where it hit the Gulf. And the third line is where it could be making landfall across the Alabama and Mississippi coast, which is not really what we're thinking right now, but that is still a possibility. We are still almost a week out. I know that sounds crazy, but we're almost about near a week out, and so this should be here by Thursday if it was to enter the Gulf. It's going to really slow down, and of course I will show that in a minute, but that is definitely the possibilities. So we could have a lot of rain coming through here with a lot of our models right now. A lot of the heavy rain could come through here, or a lot of the heavy rain could come through here. So there still is that question of where it is going to go after landfall. We kind of do have it zeroed in on where it will make landfall, but the question is, where will it go after landfall? That is our big question right now. Now, you can see how these are our spaghetti models of intensity, and you can see how most of the models are taking it up to that category strength or category 4 strength. So a lot of them are hovering at that category 3, but a lot of them, or some of them, are taking it up into the category 4. So right now we are predicting a category 4. Now, if this was to slow down, which it could, we are going to have to see. But pretty much, if this was to slow down a little bit, it'd have more time to develop, which could raise these a lot. But the scary thing is, the lowest that a lot of the models are going are the category 3, which is really concerning to me, because if that's the lowest we're going to get with a big bulk of models, you know it's going to be bad. But you can see how these do dip down pretty quickly after we do go into our landfall time period, which is about, let's say, a day after landfall. You can see how these really do go straight down. And then after a day, we could be into a tropical storm really soon, which is usually what does happen. It's not a surprise, but that shows you how quickly it can go down once it makes landfall. Now, the thing is, if it was to hit Florida, going back into the Gulf, you could see these spiking up again and doing something like that, which is what we are scared about. Okay, back on to what I've been telling y'all about this whole time. So, pretty much you can see across here, this is what we call a ridge. You can see the ridge is out, this is out, it's like a Bermuda high. It's the Bermuda high. It's really Bermuda high. There we go. I couldn't say Bermuda. I don't know why. And you can see how here is Hurricane Dorian right now. And you just keep your eye on that and keep an eye on the ridge over here. And as we do move on, you can see how this ridge starts to build west. So you can see how the ridge is pretty far west. You can see how it does move into a lot of those regions. And if we were to keep going, you can see this tropical storm is kind of still out there. And you can see how the ridge is still pretty west near landfall. So this is kind of pushing it. So you can see right here, this is kind of pushing it. It's not pushing it like crazy because it's not the closest to it. But you can see once we near landfall, this kind of backs off. So you can see how this Bermuda high kind of backs off, and this system will slow down. It could slow down a little bit before landfall. Now, when that will happen, it could happen over here. It could happen over here. It could happen over here. So really, the more south you go is the more concerning part. Now, if we were to keep going on, if it does, yes, it did. Okay. You can see how it kind of does slow down right here, and you can see it does make landfall as the high pressure right here, or the Bermuda high, pushes it. You can see how it does come back, and you can see how it forces it to move west. And you can see how once that does come in, it just throws it. And it kind of just enters, the storm kind of just enters an area of where there's really nothing, of where it's kind of in between and just being controlled by this high pressure. But you can see how it does really push it off the southeast coast pretty quickly. You can see it is pushing it off. And it should be, with this case scenario, with this scenario, or whatever you want to say, it's moving off pretty quickly, but at landfall it does slow down a little bit. Because you can see right here, if we were to go back a little bit, you can see right here, there's really nothing controlling Dorian right here. You can see here's the storm, here's the ridge, far enough north to not cause too many problems, and you can kind of see it's just in a free space of where there's really nothing to stop it, which would mean it would slow down a little bit and have more time to intensify. Now, if we were to go ahead and move on to the GFS model and look at this, it's a little different, and I will show you how, and you will definitely be able to tell once I do show you. Also, the newest GFS model is coming in, so this is going to show us where the landfall could be. Newest one, I did already take a peek, and it was way different. So you can see how the Bermuda High is up here throughout maybe the next day or around now. And you can see how it's kind of pushing this system forward, but you can see how it does build west. It's not the strongest. It's not going as far west. If you can remember with the European model, it went this far west, which it's really not that far west. Now you can see how it kind of just does stay right here. But you can see once this storm nears landfall, you can see it's a really weak, the high pressure is really weak. So if we were to look at this, you can see how once it nears landfall, this really starts to weaken and kind of the worst part does start to back off. So usually with these high wind systems, high impacts, or just really strong systems, with these little weak parts that are trying to push it or mess it up, if that's pretty weak. So if you were to think about that, you can think, you can kind of say that those little obstacles really aren't going to affect the system too much. And with the latest model runs, they have been taking this way more south, so they would be farther from that high, which would slow it down even more. And you can see how that high really doesn't affect this, and it goes pretty slow. It could be hanging off the Florida coast for almost a day near the Bahamas before it does make landfall. And you can see how it makes a landfall very slowly. And you can see how that high pressure is really nowhere to do it. You can kind of see in the back where it's kind of there, but really it's not there to affect it near landfall, which is really concerning. And you can see how this does agree with the European model at this hour. So you can see how it does move up this area, which is definitely a big possibility. Remember, some are taking it into the Gulf. You can see how there is this white space, which is another area where it could be going and not really have a little bit of a free space to move. It's kind of just trying to move around and kind of get away from this. And you can see how this does go up the southeast coast, and it could be in the ocean, which could be really concerning. That is like another one of our hugest concerns. You can see if it does stay offshore, it could just intensify as it goes up the southeast coast and cause really bad problems up the whole coast. And it's not moving particularly fast. It's not moving particularly slow. But you can see how it's taking its time is what I want to say. It is taking its time. So it could affect the whole East Coast with this model run. Hasn't fully loaded. But you can see how that high pressure really never affected this thing. It kind of did once it got around the northern Florida area. But really, that's pretty weak around it. But you can see how this does move it north a little faster than it was at landfall. And you can see how it does move north. But really, that Bermuda High, or let's just say high pressure now, has really just stayed back. And it's way back there if you were to look at it. And right here, we just have this system that is here. And it's not really being affected too badly at landfall. Also, once we get around your Georgia, South Carolina area around the coast. Okay. So that's what I was talking about the whole video, just how there is that possibility that it could slow down or get a little faster. We just don't really know yet. And if we were to go ahead and take a look at the precipitation, I do want to take a look at this. We're both looking at this for the first time. And we will, okay, no, it's right here, never mind. You can see how it's a small system at first, but it really does intensify, and you can see how it's a pretty strong system, and you can kind of see how it stays offshore a little bit, and it intensifies. It drops about 10 millibars before making landfall, and you can see how pretty much the whole state of Florida is going to get drenched with rainfall. Now, the question is, where will that eastern eye wall be? That is our main concern. If you're west of this, we will still see impacts, but not the worst impacts, as usual with a hurricane. And you can see how this thing does get around Georgia, and it does remain offshore, and it does bring a lot of rains to Georgia, South Carolina, and coastal North Carolina. And you can kind of see how it does slow down a little bit. It's not the slowest, but once again, it's not the fastest. So that is definitely a problem. If we were to look at the total accumulated precipitation, you can see how there are huge amounts. So pretty much it could be causing flooding across the whole southeast coast and, of course, all of Florida almost. And you can see how there's 1 foot to 2 feet of rain that could be falling, especially across this part of Florida. Is where our main concern for the most flooding is. But as we move up the southeast coast, if it's in the ocean, which is a scenario we've been looking at for a while now, it could be causing a lot of problems. Now, once again, if it was to go into the Gulf, it could make a track like this. So all of that heavier rainfall could be here. If it was to go a little farther east, all that heavy rainfall could be right here. Or maybe even with that second one, we could take it a little bit more east, somewhere to here. So we are going to have to see how this does develop over the next few days with the GFS model. But right now, it's what it is expecting. We are not expecting a landfall until your Monday. So we have about 1, 2, or 3 more days, 4 more days until it makes landfall. So there's still a lot that could be happening. And there is the possibility that we couldn't make landfall. Could not make landfall then and actually have a later landfall if that high pressure isn't as bearing down on it as much and is a little weaker, which is our concern right now. So if we were to move into your Saturday, we're just going to fast forward pretty quick, and you can see how strong this system is. It's still fairly small, but once we look at the satellite imagery, it'll look huge. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that, and it's going to have a lot of impacts with it. If it's a small storm, usually that doesn't matter that much. So that could mean that all the moisture is right here, right on that eastern eye wall. You can see how most of the moisture is right here along the eastern side of the storm. Now, once again, wherever that does land is the worst part. You can see on the western side of the storm, it's not as bad. So the first part that hits you with these systems aren't as bad. The middle, of course, is the eye, which I do expect to be pretty good on this system. And then the eastern side is our worst part of the storm. So right when people think it's done, the worst part of the storm comes, which is usually what scares us, because people do think that it's over, but it's really not. You can see how it does make landfall across the Bahamas sometime on your Sunday, and it takes all day until your Monday until this does make landfall. And you can see how it makes landfall somewhere across Boca Raton, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and you can see how by your Monday night, you're really just drenched in this rain, not really good timing at all. And you can see how all that moisture is in that eastern side. Now, a lot of the moisture, of course, is in right here also on the western side, but really the main big part of it where all the moisture is put right together is right there across the eastern side of the storm. And you will see how a lot of these wraparound storms do come when the system makes landfall after, kind of like when it moves a little bit north, you'll have those storms behind it, which also could include some severe weather. Those usually do. So usually these wraparound isolated storms are our worst concern when it comes to severe weather. Now, if you are on this northeastern quadrant of the storm, that is also where we can see severe weather with tropical systems. It's once again the northeastern quadrant, which is always a concern right there. That's what we do like to call it, and that's where we do see most of our severe weather. But pretty much anywhere on the eastern storm is really where you do get hit bad. Now, as we do move into your Thursday, you can see it takes almost 3 days, maybe even 4 days to get into Georgia. So for a while in Florida, we're going to be in this. And you can see it's only in Georgia by your Thursday. So almost half of the week it took to make it to Georgia from Florida, which is not good. And you can see how it does speed up a little bit on this model. This is the European model once again, but you can see how it's not that quick. Now, by your Friday, it's expected to enter the Carolinas. Now, you can see how most of this rain, the impacts aren't as bad as, of course, they were at landfall. But you can see how there is a lot of rain across here, and it's not looking good for anybody. Now, if we were to look at your Saturday, this starts to move off parts of Virginia, also into New Jersey. We are seeing some problems, parts of Maryland. You can see how we are seeing problems. D.C. will have to watch out for you, too, for some commutes. We will have to see how that does do. But if we were to go back a little bit to landfall, I did want to show you all this, just to show you how intense this could be. I wanted to look at the winds also. I know this is a very long video, but it is a tropical update. Once again, I just want to get the most information out. And you can see how some wind gusts are upwards of 130 miles an hour, which is what we are expecting our sustained winds to be. And you can see how it does intensify a little bit before landfall, and we're at 134, 135. Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, you're at 100 some miles an hour, 100 in the teens of 100. And you can see as it moves inland, it gets worse. And then on the back side, it's still really gusty, and it's not good. If we were to look at sustained winds, these aren't as correct as they should be with the models. But you can see some of the sustained winds are still pretty high. They will be higher than that, I do promise you, but it could be pretty bad. Just think of that. Sustained winds of 90. That's the whole time it's there. That is really bad. Okay, just think about this. If you're in a 60-mile-per-hour severe storm, and you think this is really bad, it's happened for about 5 minutes now, just imagine being in that for, let's say, about 5 or 6 hours, or imagine a tornado. Imagine being in a tornado for 5 or 6 hours, also a bunch of rain coming on you and flooding. Just imagine how bad that could be. And you can see it as it does move inland. It does take those winds with it. They're not as crazy, but you can see how it does take those winds with it, and it could be really gusty still. And you can see how it's really still really concerning with those gusty winds. Once those grounds are really saturated too, we can see a lot of that affecting a lot of people with a lot of power outages and a lot of trees falling down. And you can see it still does have really high wind gusts on your Saturday. But winds usually aren't our biggest concern. As you can remember, we did look at the rain, and you can see how much rain we are expecting in the next 10 days. So we're going to zoom in on this, because I do want to show everyone how bad the rains could be. Just imagine having 20-some inches of rain. I know some of you have been in it too. Just imagine having 20-some or almost 2 feet of rain in about, let's say, 3 days. We can't go to the next 3 days on here, but you can't just imagine that, how bad that would be. And these are also those outer bands, and some of those outer bands could be stronger. Some of the strongest thunderstorms could bring a lot of flooding too, just bring up like 2 inches of rain every hour, which is not good. And you can see how, as it does move up the coast, right at landfall, it's really intense. Almost 2 feet of rain could be expected in some areas. And you can see how as it does move up the coast, we still do have really bad rains. Almost a foot upwards of rain across parts of Georgia and South Carolina. And you can see how as we do keep going up the southeast coast, we have anywhere from 3 to 6 inches across eastern North Carolina. Even central North Carolina, we do have some rain. But really centered across eastern North Carolina, we have a lot of rain. If you're in the Raleigh area, that is not good for people in Raleigh. And you can see as we get really close to D.C., there are rains of 5 inches right east of you in parts of Maryland. And you can see as we do move into Virginia, coastal Virginia, we are seeing a lot of rain. And then you can see we do have that rain keep going up. Now, if we were to look at this, you did see those rains, and you can see, I just want to tell you all this. You can see how we do have this tropical depression somewhere in here. It's really hard to find. And you can see how there are some wraparound storms that are kind of coming in from that system. So a lot of people might be thinking, is that why we're seeing a lot of rain in some of these areas? Most likely not. We will still see a lot of rain from Dorian that will be coming up towards part of the northeast coast, and also New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, also into Newfoundland. You're really close across here. Newfoundland, you're really close. We are going to have to watch. But right now, the southeast coast is our biggest concern. If you live anywhere across the southeast, extreme southeast, especially into the coastal area or Florida, you really do need to watch this. I would move this all the way over here. If you're anywhere in here, you need to be watching out for some flooding that could be coming through with a lot of these heavy rains. This will be the same thing, or just a little less if it does move west, but pretty much it'd be the same thing across some of these areas. So if this does shift, this whole area could be under a foot of rain. You do have to think of that if this does shift. And remember, a lot of the models are already shifting with the hurricane models. If you do remember, they were already moving into the Gulf a little bit more, which would move this whole system a little bit more west, which is way more concerning. It's still concerning across the southeast coast, but you do have to think about that, how bad that could be. Alright guys, I hope y'all did enjoy today's video. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below. I know it was a very long video. I would usually apologize, but with this one, I really can't apologize because this is a really bad storm. But if you did enjoy today's video, once again, I hope you all did, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have an amazing day.